Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina and I'm the Capability Building Coordinator for Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up is a part of the Info Exchange Group. Info Exchange is a not-for-profit social enterprise that has delivered technology for social justice for over 25 years. With over 100 staff across Australia and New Zealand, we tackle the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar Reporting for Grants, which will be presented by Mick Devine from CalCSA. We'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, please type it into the questions box on your webinar panel and I'll be able to assist you through there. If you have any questions during the session, please also type it into the questions box and Mick will answer them in the Q&A section at the end of the webinar. Please note that your comments and questions will not appear to the entire group. If you are on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. If possible, please close all other programs to help you have the best experience. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you shortly after the webinar ends. Before we start, I'd also like to remind you that there will be a short survey at the end of the webinar. We'd appreciate it if you took a few minutes to provide us with some feedback. That's all from me for now. I'll pass it over to Mick to get things started. Thanks, Mick.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. What I want to do today is just explore a few thoughts about reporting for grants and some suggestions on how to do that better, how to take some of the time out of it, talk a little bit about accounting systems, grouping and summarizing information. Grant reporting often includes non-financial metrics these days. People want to know what you've actually achieved, what you've done, how many people you've helped, that sort of thing. I'll talk a little bit about spreadsheets and some of the ways that you can make your spreadsheets better. Spreadsheets are very flexible, but they're also very dangerous. And then I'll talk about CalCSA and how CalCSA can help take some of the time out of the whole reporting process and simplify it and make it a bit more reliable for you. So let's talk first about the sort of things that grant reporting includes. And I'm sure most of this isn't going to be new and startling information to most of you out there, but often funding providers will give you half a dozen different headings that you need to report against, and they're almost certainly got no connection to the way you've grouped things in your accounting system. They've got no connection to the headings that you've got in your accounting system. So you need to find different ways of summarizing and grouping that data. And my experience is that pretty much every funder has different requirements, partly because their funding has a different purpose and they're interested in different outcomes, so it makes sense to have different headings that they want to report against. And often you'll get two different grants from the same department that have different heading requirements and different grouping requirements. So you need to be able to manage that and in a way that's not too onerous for you. And I guess before you even get to reporting on your grants, you need to be able to account for them accurately and as easily as possible. And I know back in the days when I was young, and that's probably before most of you were born, the typical way of managing grants was to have a separate bank account for each transaction, and then you'd deposit the grant into that bank account and you'd report back what you'd spent out of that bank account, and you knew that whatever was left in that bank account was what was left of the grant. And it was basic and it was crude, but it worked given the limitations of technology at the time. Every now and again, I still see organizations working that way, even though they've got electronic accounting systems, and it's really not necessary. You should be using the cost center reporting in your accounting system, whether that's jobs in MYOB, tracking categories in Xero, classes in QuickBooks. That's what should be identifying the transactions that belong to a particular grant, and where the actual cash isn't relevant. It's how much income did you get, what were the expenses associated with it. So use those job tracking category systems within the accounting system to assign that to every transaction so you know what's been spent on each grant. Some systems are easier than others, excuse me, and some are more flexible than others. None of them are very good on the reporting side, but that's why we're here today. And then the other thing to bear in mind is also, as I mentioned, the non-financial metrics. 10, 20 years ago, grant providers weren't terribly interested in the non-financial stuff. You know, if they gave you a grant of $1 million, they wanted to know what that $1 million was spent on, but they didn't ask too many questions about how many people did you help or whatever. But now it is about, you know, how many hours of support did you provide to people, how many homeless people did you provide beds for, that sort of thing. So it's important to be able to track that information. Generally, when you're applying for the grant, you'll provide them with some estimate of what you're going to achieve, and again, it's about comparing actuals to budget for that non-financial stuff as well. And then the other non-financial part of it is about putting some words to your grant reporting to actually tell a story about what you've achieved and how you've spent that grant. And in a way, that's part of the sales process for your organization. You want that funding provider to know that you've spent that money well, and therefore you're a deserving recipient of the next round of funding. So I think it's important to include some words about what you've achieved and what the benefits to the community are. So let's have a look at spreadsheets, and I'm not going to tell you how to construct a spreadsheet. I'm going to assume that you know what a spreadsheet is and how to put numbers into it and how to put formulas in and that sort of thing. What I do want to do is talk about some best practices with spreadsheets, because spreadsheets can be fantastically flexible. You can do almost anything with a spreadsheet, and you know that's one of the real benefits of a spreadsheet, but it's also one of the downsides of a spreadsheet. Because they're so flexible, it's very easy to make mistakes, to break a spreadsheet. So there's an organization called the Spreadsheet Standards Review Board. ssrb.org is their website, and they've got some great guidelines on how to structure your spreadsheets well so that you can understand what's happening, so you can minimize mistakes, so that you can prevent other people from making mistakes with your spreadsheet, so you can protect them well and make it clear what's happening on your spreadsheets. And part of that is, and I'll show you an example in a moment, but it's about dividing up into separate sheets the assumptions or inputs to your work, the output or calculations from it, and then the presentation of it. You know, and the presentation part is probably the part that's most open to, you want to do some pretty formatting on there. You want to make it look good. You want to style it according to your corporate colors and with your logo on there and that sort of thing. But it's making sure that you do that without losing the integrity of what lies behind it. So they suggest using different styles and colors for things like constants. So the numbers that you put in should be in blue, formulas should be in black. Anything that's a mixture of formula and input is in green, so that you can look at that spreadsheet and see immediately what different bits of data are, where you can enter data, where you shouldn't enter data, etc. And then document what you've done with your spreadsheet. I think it's very easy, and I think we've all done it at some point. We've been in a hurry to do a report for something, and we just knock up a quick spreadsheet thinking this is only temporary. I'm only going to use it once, and nobody else is going to use it after me. The SSRB recommend that you always start from the assumption that a spreadsheet will have a long life and that somebody else will use it after you, because invariably that quick spreadsheet that you knock up actually turned out to be quite useful. So you make a copy of it and then you expand it and you add some extra features to it. But because you didn't start off with good practices, you continue the bad practices and the sloppiness and and the lack of documentation, and it grows and grows and it gets more complicated and more complicated, and eventually you go on holiday or you get promoted or you retire or you resign or whatever, and it gets passed on to someone else and they can't make sense of it. So a spreadsheet should have good documentation about its purpose, what it does, who it's for, who created it. It should be divided into different sections, and a simple spreadsheet may only have one section, but there should be a cover page, there should be a table of contents so that you can easily get from one page to the next. It's obvious what those different pages are, and you put comments liberally throughout your spreadsheet to explain what it is you've done, how you've done things. And I'm most familiar with Excel these days, but whether you're using Excel, Google Sheets, Open Office, the process is pretty much the same. And I mean, I don't know too many people these days using Lotus 123, but once upon a time I considered myself a genius on that. But comments in Excel now can actually be a conversation, and you can reply to them and have a dialogue with the other users of the spreadsheet through the comment system. So there's opportunities there, there's tools there to document your work, so use them. And then it's about validating information. I was in Newcastle a week before last talking to one of the accounting firms that we do some work with, and their auditors who do a lot of auditing work of not-for-profit organizations. And they were complaining about the spreadsheets that they get to audit, and saying that basically the only way that they can validate many of the spreadsheets they get is by creating another spreadsheet from scratch to do exactly the same thing and seeing if they come up with the same result. It shouldn't have to be like that. You're making life hard for your auditors, and eventually that's going to cost you money. So put validation checks in your spreadsheet. If you've got rows and columns of numbers, add them up both ways, so that if you get the same variances both ways, you've got the right result. If you don't, you know that something's been missed, a formula's been mistyped, that sort of stuff. And then ideally you will have a page with alerts that can include links to all your auditing cells, so you can see on one place what's right, what's not right, and and spot mistakes before they bite you. And I think we've all made quick last minute changes to reports, and only to come back the next month and realize that those quick last minute changes broke something, and if we haven't noticed them, then we end up perpetuating that mistake month after month. And then when you do make copies of a spreadsheet, when you do share a spreadsheet, make sure you've got some sort of version number, some sort of date of when it was last modified, who modified it. If you're combining information from different spreadsheets, be careful about what you're combining and make sure you document what you're linking. So it's not rocket science, but it's about being careful with that data. And if I just quickly show you an example of the sort of things that the SSRB recommend. So it's about having a cover page that tells you what this document's about, tells me who it was prepared by and when, what version it is, and these cells with the blue text I can edit and enter. I've got a table of contents which is hyperlinked, so I can go to the table of contents. From there, I can go to my assumptions page. This is where I enter my data so that I know that these are the cells that I put data in. My staff costs here are all calculated from these staff numbers and salaries down here, so I don't edit those formulas. It's about protecting your data, making sense of it, and then in the output side, where I've got, I've just got simple examples here where I've got actuals and budget and a variance, which I've got a formula that calculates there. So the formula, the total variance at the bottom of this column is the sum of that, the variance column, but then I also calculate the variance as the difference between those two here and put some conditional formatting on it so it shows as green if it's the same as that variance, or red if it's not, so that you can spot errors quickly. That's the idea, so that you don't present the wrong information to your funding provider, to your board, to your managers. It's simple stuff. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience to get used to it, but it's once you've done it, it's not that hard. And you can I use these formatting things at the top here and I customize some of them to, so my constants there are in blue, so you can easily format different cells just by selecting the labels up the top there. Now, when it comes to grouping things, so if we assume that I've taken this list of expenses from my accounting system and combined it with my budgets, in terms of summarizing that information for your grant report, I have seen people who will pretty much just take a row like that and copy it, paste it down here somewhere, and then paste all the other admin ones under it, and then paste all the operations ones under that, and use that as a method of regrouping them, separating them. That's not the way I would do it. I've inserted this heading column here, and I've gone down and I've put admin, marketing, operations, clients, whatever the headings are next to each line. And then I would go to data, sort by heading, so that all the admin ones together, all the clients ones together. I've got one that I don't want to include, so I would delete that one there. And then I would use the subtotal function. And the subtotal function, you need to be in a table of data. And if I go subtotal there, and because I'm on the heading column, it's assume that I want to base my subtotal on the change of heading. But if you started on another column, you know, so if I started there, for example, and went subtotal, oh, actually, it's probably remembering what I did earlier when I was practicing. But you can select, so I want every change in heading, and I want to put a subtotal in the Q1 actuals budget variance and the year-to-date actual budget variance, and I want to use the sum of those numbers, which is what you would normally do. So the sum will add them up, and I want the summary below the data. Click OK, and that gives me totals within that data. And it's put different header levels here. Now, if I go to level 2 here, it summarizes that for me. And now I've got the information I need grouped and summarized by these amounts that my funding provider has asked for. And then I can either, you know, copy and paste that onto something else to do the presentation, or I could have a presentation sheet that links to that and go from there. But I think the important thing with the spreadsheet is to make sure you use standard ways of using spreadsheets. You check things and you document things. Let's move on, and yeah, I think that's basically what I've just talked about. Let's talk a bit about how we do grants in Calxa. For those of you who aren't aware, Calxa is available. What's Calxa? let's go back a step. Calxa's reporting software that adds on to MYOB QuickBooks Xero to make your reporting process quicker, easier, more reliable. We've been doing this since 2000, so 19 years now, which seems like a long time. You know, and we're still trying to do it better. Calxa is available as a donation to small and medium not-for-profits through Connecting Up, and there's a discount program for larger ones. So I'll talk about that later on. But one of the things that we do is give you better reporting by business unit. So jobs in MYOB, tracking categories in Xero, classes, locations, jobs, customers in QuickBooks than you would get in the accounting system. So you can do monthly budgets, you can do budgets for up to 10 years ahead. So you can do things in Calxa on the budgeting side of things, on the reporting side of things that you can't do in your accounting system. So you can easily compare actuals against budget. The accounting data's come straight from the accounting system so that you know that that's got integrity. What's in the accounting system is what you're reporting on. And then when it comes to those headers that you report against, we've got function in Calxa called account trees, which lets you create new headings in Calxa, and you just drag across detail accounts that go under each one. And you would basically create an account tree for each grant with the 5, 6, 7, 10 headings, whatever, drag across the detail accounts, doesn't matter with the income accounts, expense accounts or whatever. And then use that every time you want to report on that grant. And you can have as many of those account trees as you want. A few years ago, when there was lots of Medicare locals around the country, I had one that in Nowra down in New South Wales that was using Calxa, and the finance manager there, she had 137 different account trees because she had that many different funding bodies that she had to report to, and they were all different. But once she'd done that setup once, she was able to just run those reports every month and check that everything was on track. So, and I think that's another important part of the benefit of Calxa. You know, it's one thing to report to your funding provider at the end of the grant and do that acquittal reporting, but I think if you discover that at the end that you're overspent or underspent, it's too late to do anything about it. You need to be monitoring that grant funding month by month over whatever the timeline of the grant is, and Calxa makes it easy to do that, and I'll show you in a moment how it works. I'll give you the quick tour of the reporting process, and also in Calxa we can record non-financial metrics, so you can keep a track of what you've put in the budget for the number of hours of care that you're going to provide, the number of people that you're going to help, etc., and then track actuals against that. Excuse me, and use our KPI function to provide reports on that. So, and then we've got a number of different reports in Calxa that will help you then compare actuals to budget. And this one here, for example, you've got actual budget and variance for the month, year to date, the full year budget, and what's unspent or unearned. And I've got this sorted by the different headings that come out of, oops, excuse me, I'm scrolling my mouse badly there. Sorted by the different headings. I've highlighted where we've got higher than normal variances so that you can easily see what's on track, what's not on track, and take action before it's too late. So let's have a quick look at Calxa, and I'm thinking it's probably going to want me to sign in again, but I'll just, it is. Just a moment, won't be far away. It's just a security thing where if you don't use it for a while, it signs you out. Anyway, so this is Calxa, and if I go and start at the budget end of things, so in Calxa we can do budgets at the cost center level. So if we assume that this 200 support services with two different programs under it, local and Queensland, and I can set a budget for each of those. Now, our budgets default to the financial year, but you can actually budget for any date range. So, you know, so if you've got grant funding that goes across, you know, from an education department who typically use calendar year budgets, you can do that. If you've got funding that, you know, starts in May and ends in October, you'd set that as the date range. So very flexible there, and as I said before, you can do budgets for up to 10 years ahead. And so I've got a budget that I've put in for this program, and for the second one in that group. So I've put those in. My organization budget I don't need to maintain separately because it's consolidating all my project budgets. So in this case, this is an MYOB file, but the principle's the same, whether it's come from MYOB, Xero, QuickBooks, it's all the same once it gets into Calxa. And then with those business units or jobs or tracking categories, whatever they are, we create lists of them. So here's one I prepared earlier. And if I just unselect that, so all I do is for this grant report, I need to report on the 2 different programs under number 200. And when I select that, I can do a detailed report, a consolidated and detailed, or consolidated. So I'm going to consolidate this because I need to report, in this case, I need to report on the 2 programs combined. And so I save that. So that will give me my list. And now here's my account trees. And this is where, excuse me, I can rearrange my chart of accounts. If I look at the expenses section here, what I've done is I've just dragged across this new header and created headings for wages, admin, motor vehicles, operational, clinical. And I can then just drag accounts from one section to another. Simple, yeah. And if, for example, staff amenities aren't covered by this grant and I need to exclude them, I can move them down to other expenses and not report on them. So I can move things in and out easily. I can have other levels of reporting. You know, if I wanted motor vehicles to be a subheading of operational, I can do that. It's just about dragging those accounts around. And as you can see here, I've got multiple account trees. In a couple of weeks' time, and I don't normally talk too much about what we're doing in the future, we're actually expanding the ability to move accounts across account types. At the moment, you can only move between related account types, like between cost of sales expenses and other expenses. But in a couple of weeks' time, with our next update, you'll be able to move asset accounts into that expense section as well. So if your grant acquittal report needs to include capital expenditure items, you would just move that plant and equipment across onto there, which won't work at the moment, but it's not far away and it will. So that sets up the account trees. I've set up my business units, so that's the main settings. I forgot to show you one thing in the budget section. If I just go back to my, where's my job? We can also report here on metrics. And so I've got a metric for care hours provided that I've added, and you can add any metrics you like. And I've put in a budget of 1,000 hours a month, and I can also enter actuals for that. And so I've entered actuals for July and August. I'm assuming August is pretty close to finished, and put those numbers in. And then in our KPIs, in the KPI builder, I've created a KPI for care hours provided, and that's just a point and click process. For those of you interested, I'm doing another webinar in a couple of months' time on KPIs for not-for-profits. So come along to that and I'll give you a bit more detail on how we do the KPIs, but you'll see that that's a really simple one. Others can be a little bit more complex. I mean, this one's not too complex. We're just checking that we're not dividing by 0, and then it's total income divided by care hours provided to get the average cost per hour of care. But let's go and have a look at reporting, because that's our main focus today. We just need to have that KPI and the metrics in order to get the excuse me, get that information onto the reports. So we've got lots of different reports templates here in Calcs, and I'm losing count, but I think it's around 130 something. But you can narrow them down quite easily. You can say I want something that compares actuals to budget and has numbers and runs for a financial year or whatever. Or you can also type here. So if I type unspent, we've got a couple of variations on the unspent budget report. One that gives you the year-to-date actuals compared to the full year budget. And this one here, I like best for ongoing sort of monthly reporting on where we're up to with this particular program, so that because it shows actuals, budget and variance for the month, year to date, and the full year budget, so you can see where you're up to. And now, number of different filters that we need to choose on this. First, business units. We don't want to report at the organization level. We want our grant 200 projects. The budget we're using is the current forecast. So you can have multiple budgets in Calcster. And the account tree is that one we created, the grant 200 reporting. I want to report at level 2 because I just want the summary level. I only need to report on the expense side of things because the income's fixed. The grant's been allocated. There's nothing I can do about the income. It's the expenses that we need to manage month by month. I want to show some KPIs. So let's find my care hours average cost, care hours provided, and I could show exceptions and that sort of thing if I wanted to, but let's keep it simple for now. And that shows me my report. Let's just pop that out to another tab just to have a bit of a better look at it. So I've got actuals, budget and variance for the month, year to date, and then the full year budget, which is then compared to what's unspent and the percentage that I've spent so far. And I've got my headings split as my funder asks for: wages, admin, motor vehicles, operational, clinical. And then I've got my 2 KPIs at the bottom here, the average cost per hour of the care hours and the number of hours that we've provided compared to the budget, so that you can see where we're up to. Is this on track? Is it not on track? Are we going to have problems at the end of the year? In this case, I'd say no, we're actually spending much less than anticipated. So possibly I'd be wondering why the wages haven't been allocated to this program, and I'd be going and checking with the payroll team and saying, you know, has the wages been misallocated here? We've spent less than expected on motor vehicles. Why is that? But it's about having that information to then provide that information, to analyze that and know where you're up to, so there's no surprises when it comes to doing the acquittal. And now, I had a few boxes to tick when I configured this report, and I don't know about you, but I'm one of the lazy people, and I don't like to do that every month. So we have a concept of report bundles, and I'm going to add this to a report bundle, and I'm going to create a new bundle, and I'm going to call this grant 200 and create the bundle. And then this is the expenses to budget, make that the title of the report, add this report to the bundle, and then I can go and create another report. So if I go and, let's say I want a chart for the KPI. So the cumulative KPI analysis chart, that would be good. Let's do this again. It's remembered my grant 200 projects, and I want my care hours provided. Don't show the criteria. Refresh the report. And if I just make that a bit bigger for you so you can see it. So this one shows the year-to-date budget. That's a straight line because we budgeted $1,000 hours a month. And then the bars show the year-to-date actuals, and we're just over budget at the moment. So you can see how you're tracking against that budget. And then again, so that I don't have to make this selection every month, I just add that to that bundle, grant 200, change the title to care hours, add that report to the, let's make the name of it care hours as well. And you can drag and drop and move them around to whatever sequence you want. But the idea is that then next month, I'd come back in September, change the date there to September, go run bundle, and those 2 reports or whatever I wanted would be there, ready to go, one after the other. No thinking required on my part. I don't need to remember what selections I did last time or whatever. And I could, if I've got a cover page here, I'm going to copy this cover page from my other grant report, call it the cover page, copy that, and move that there. So I've now got my cover page there. So there's a document editor there where you can do a cover page, you can put your logo on there, etc. And you can also use that document editor to do a summary page and that sort of thing. And I think I've got one here that I prepared earlier somewhere. Yes, look, here we are. So I've got a cover page. I've got an outcome report. So my funding providers asked for this information, and I've copied and pasted that into the document editor. And I would then normally go through and just fill out those details about what we did, what the outcomes were, that sort of thing. Give them that unspent budget report on what we've spent it on, how we're going for the full year, how we're going on each of those metrics, the care hours provided, the average cost of those care hours, and with the document editor, I can add notes to the bottom of this chart. So I'm saying the average cost was below budget because we use volunteers. So you can put details there. You can provide the information that they need. You can do a full year budget showing forecast, which is actuals year to date, and budget for the rest of the year compared to the full year budget. So, but once that, the idea is that you put your reports into a bundle like I've done there, and then you can just run that each month, and it's really simple. You can also, in our automation, create a workflow that workflows can do 2 things. One is an organization sync. So it'll bring across the latest data from your Xero or MYOB or wherever, and then generate and send a bundle of reports to a list of email addresses, and you can specify when that goes. So in this case, I've got it going at 3 a.m. on the 7th of every month. So you can provide your program manager with the reports on her program regularly, up to date, every month in a familiar format, consistently, and you know there'll be no mistakes in it. So it's about getting the delivery of those reports done on a regular basis so that you can check things month by month as you go through the year. And then when it comes to the final acquittal, you've got all your information there, and you can then just send it off to your funding provider. So that's pretty much what that's pretty much what I've got to say about how things work in Calxa. Now, I did mention earlier that we've got a donation program that we operate through Connecting Up, and I probably should find the website and just show you where that is. If you go to calxa.com, excuse me, if you scroll right down to the bottom of any page, there's a donations link there, and there's a bit of information there about since we started the donation program in 2011, we initially said that we do $1 million worth of donations. We're up to 1.8 million almost so far, for 1,014 different organizations. So you can join those numbers. The basic criteria is turnover of less than $1 million, and there are some sort of category criteria. But if you're in any of the sort of community social services categories, you'll definitely qualify. But talk to our friends at Connecting Up or TechSoup. They'll be able to help with the details. There's a link there to TechSoup New Zealand and Connecting Up in Australia. And for those of you who don't qualify for the donation, they'll give you a link to get a discounted price from us as well. There is a free trial if you just want to get in, have a play, which you'll find a few of these free trial buttons scattered around the Calxa website. 30 days, you can connect it to your MYOB, your Xero, your QuickBooks, try it for yourself. We provide support and help for anybody who gets stuck. In the app, there's a help me button there that gets you to our customer support team and to our help center. And we have a customer support team who answer the telephone when you get stuck on something as well. So don't be shy about calling us, talking to us. We're more than happy to help and try and make life easier for you. Tina, we got any questions?
Thanks, Mick. We haven't had any questions come through. Was there anything that you wanted to add? And if there's none that come through in that time, we'll just wrap up.
Oh, what do I want to add? I should have asked you earlier if I got questions. now you've caught me out. I think whether you do your grant reporting using a spreadsheet or using something like Calxa, it's about being organized with it. It's about planning, and I think it's really critical to do that reporting on a regular basis, month by month, and not just leave it until the last minute, because you want to know that that grant is on track during the year and not find out at the end of the year. And you want to make that process as easy as possible so that you can spend time doing things that you're supposed to be doing, not spending all your days and hours preparing reports.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Mick, for presenting today, and thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you've all learnt a lot from the presentation. If you do have any questions that come to mind later on or any feedback at all, please send that through to events@connectingup.org. Don't forget that the recording will be available on the website very shortly, and a link will be sent to you, so keep an eye out in your inbox. I'll also send you all the links of the Calxa products on our donations and discounts program, so you can have a look at that too. So again, thank you for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thanks, Mick. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.